Hello everyone and welcome to Talking the Talkies. I'm Peter Waters, and for today's video I will be talking about my top 10 movies of the year of 2021. So before we get into the main 10, I just wanted to rattle off some of my honorable mentions for this year. The movies that almost made it. At one point or another they might have been on my top 10 list, but they got phased out throughout the year. Alright, so I have 9 honorable mentions before the main feature here. First up is The Eyes of Tammy Faye, directed by Michael Showalter, who directed The Big Sick. And this is like a controversial figure in the world of televangelism, but it paints a sympathetic portrait of her. Maybe she's maligned in the media, but we get to see maybe what it was really like behind the scenes and how difficult her journey was. Played by Jessica Chastain, who I believe deserves the Oscar for this performance. We also have the movie I Care a Lot, which was released on Netflix earlier this year, starring Rosamund Pike as a woman who is trying to scam old people out of all their money. And so that is just a delightful black comedy, I would say. Also, we have Judas and the Black Messiah, led by 2 great performances by Lakeith Stanfield and Daniel Kaluuya. It's about the Black Panther Party in the 1960s, and it is very tense and well acted, and I highly recommend that one. Next up is Malcolm and Marie. This one's getting very mixed reviews. It's currently rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, but I disagree. I think it's a fantastic chamber piece drama with 2 powerhouse young actors in it, from the director of Euphoria. It's pretty much just one long argument, and I don't know, I really like seeing imbalanced people arguing about things, so I recommend Malcolm and Marie for the acting specifically. Also, if you really like horror movies, the movie The Night House, starring Rebecca Hall, is a great ghost movie, one of the best of that genre I've seen in a very long time. Genuinely creeped me out, which is hard to do because I see so many horror movies. I think Rebecca Hall deserves an Oscar nomination for this performance, but horror is never respected, so this movie's sort of getting forgotten about. But don't let it be a sleeper hit. Check it out. Rebecca Hall is great in the movie. Alright, next up is the action movie Nobody, from the writer of John Wick, and pretty much Bob Odenkirk from Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad is basically middle-aged John Wick, and it's a lot of fun. And Christopher Lloyd is in it in a brief role as well, but he is glorious in the film. So I highly recommend Nobody. This one's kind of more of a fun movie. It's not like you have to see it, but it is great for action junkies. My next honorable mention is Red Rocket from Sean Baker, who is one of my favorite directors working today. His movie The Florida Project, I believe, was my number 1 or number 2 movie that year. And this one is also sort of looking at margins of society, very poor white people, basically, yet again. And this one is about an ex-porn star actor who returns to his hometown in Texas, and he tries to, get his life moving again in some very shady ways. It's really darkly funny at times, and it's sort of this very bleak look at the current landscape of America and how desperate people are nowadays. So I thought it was a really interesting movie, and Sean Baker, again, hits it out of the park with another great movie. We also have this small little indie movie called Small Engine Repair that stars John Bernthal, who was on The Walking Dead, and this one sort of came and went, but it's a really effective little thriller that slowly develops as time goes on. It starts off kind of just like this family drama, and you don't really know where it's going, but then it goes to some very dark places, and I really enjoyed it. It's also sort of a local movie because the setting is Manchester, New Hampshire, so any fellow New Hampshireites out there, definitely check this one out. And then my final honorable mention is Woodstock 99, sort of a concert from hell movie. Basically, you're glad you weren't there. Unlike the peace and love of the original Woodstock, this one was filled with anger and rage, and people were going to the bathroom everywhere. It was super hot. People were dying. It is an insane true story that kind of blew my mind when I watched it. So I recommend all those movies, although they weren't high enough on my list to bump into the top 10. I recommend all of them. Alright, so now it's time for the official top 10 list. My number 10 pick is an animated film from Disney called Raya and the Last Dragon. This is the 59th official Disney animation film, and it's this epic fantasy movie that was released earlier this year in March, right when movie theaters were slowly starting to reopen, and it didn't do so well in the theaters, and which is a shame because to me it's one of the best animated movies I've seen in a long time. The way they animated this world is so fantastic and full of visual surprises as well. Awkwafina also is a voice actress in this film, and she always brings this really great sense of humor to the film. So it has heart, it has action, it has humor. The way they animated the fight scenes in the choreography, even though it's animated, it was super impressive. It just is a visual feast. And even though some of the story, it's a little bit cliche, you know, it's a typical Disney, very formulaic story, but within that formula, it really succeeds. So I would not let this one go under your radar. Raya and the Last Dragon has my number 10 spot. All right, next up, my number 9 movie is called Blue Bayou. This was written, directed, and starring Justin Chon, who I've been a fan of since seeing his directorial debut, Gook, at a film festival that I volunteered for. I kind of went to that movie on a whim, and because I knew that the producers for the film were doing a Q&A afterwards, so I'm like, hey, what the heck, I'll go, it's free, I'll check it out, and it totally blew my mind. It was like a modern day, do the right thing sort of movie, and I thought it was fantastic. It had a lot to say about race and things like that. It was shot beautifully, and Blue Bayou is very similar in theme and how it was shot and things like that. It looks very gritty and real, and Justin Chon co-stars along with Alicia Vikander, another one of my favorite actors today, and they play a couple, and he all of a sudden gets papers that says he has to go back to Korea because his adoptive parents did not sign the proper forms. So he has a lot of issues. He has a criminal past that he's trying to get past, and now he's slapped with this thing. So he's trying to balance his family life as a father and a husband and trying to hold things together, and it's failing at every turn. And I just thought this was a super dramatic, really well done movie, shot really beautifully as well. It has probably my favorite opening shot of any movie this year. And I just thought it was really good, and no one's really talking about this one. Blue Bayou definitely opened my eyes to this very specific issue that I didn't know about, where, you know, these people who've spent their entire lives in America are forced to, you know, relocate to their home country because of some paperwork not filed in the 80s. You know, it's the sort of incredible true thing that really opens your eyes to the systemic problems in this country, and it does so with some great acting and a great story that, honestly, by the end of it, it made me tear up. So it is definitely one of those types of movies. If you're not on board with, you know, sort of some heavy melodrama to your movies, you might not appreciate it, but I loved Blue Bayou. That's what makes it my number 9 pick this year. All right, my number 8 movie is another emotionally devastating drama. This one is called Pieces of a Woman, and it stars Vanessa Kirby as a mother, or a mother-to-be. And the first 15-20 minutes of this film is some of the most impressive filmmaking I have seen all year. It is one long, unbroken take of a very intense home birth that goes very, very wrong. And I won't say exactly what goes wrong, but the whole movie after that is her dealing with that and her family dealing with the outcome of that event. Ellen Burstyn plays her mother, who isn't super sympathetic to her as well. Just an all-around really great drama, very intense. The music score from Howard Shore is surprisingly moving as well. When I first heard the score to this film, I honestly thought it was all found classical pieces, but it was written for this movie, which is pretty incredible. The director is this Hungarian guy named Cornel Mundrusko, I believe you pronounce it, and he is definitely a filmmaker to watch. His movie White God landed on my 2014 top 10 list, and that has some of the most amazing animal acting I've ever seen in a film. He's always pushing the boundaries of what films can do and how to make movies, so he is just one of those guys that I look forward to everything that he puts out, and Pieces of a Woman was certainly an impressive achievement in both acting and filmmaking. So that's why it gets my number 8 pick. pick for the year. Alright, my number 7 pick is a movie called Zola, and this is an interesting film because it's probably one of the only ones in cinema history, at least so far, that can claim that it's based off of a Twitter story written by a stripper. Yes, that's right. This is a movie that came from a stripper's Twitter feed, and believe it or not, it is a fascinating odyssey of sorts. Pretty much it describes one crazy, wild road trip weekend that she took alongside one of her friend's sort of sketchy, low-life boyfriend, as well as, for all intents and purposes, her pimp as well, played by Coleman Domingo. And especially Coleman Domingo in this movie, he's one of those faces you probably recognize all over the place, like in Euphoria or The Walking Dead. And he particularly, I thought, was a great sort of villain in this story, and he's very intense, and anytime his Nigerian accent breaks out, you know stuff is going to go down. It's shot in a very raw way, like you can tell that they probably shot this on actual film stock, so it has this grainy feeling to it, so you're definitely in the trenches with them. It doesn't feel like this glossy movie. It's definitely like this very realistic portrait. Sometimes the characters can actually feel annoying, but I thought that that was accurate. You know, these are characters that don't speak in movie star language. They talk the way, you know, these actual strippers would, and it was kind of this fascinating portrait of, again, this marginalized society. It was kind of like Goodfellas, but with strippers getting in over their heads. Although I will say, do not watch this movie with grandma, because there is some heavy-duty nudity in this film. So definitely, if you're a pearl-clutching, God-fearing old lady, do not watch this movie. But otherwise, if you can handle it, I recommend Zola. It is a very intriguing form of storytelling in film, capturing this sort of little society that I have very little experience with. So definitely check that one out. All right, my number 6 pick is The Rescue. This is a documentary from the same team that won the Oscar for Free Solo few years ago, which was an amazing documentary about a crazy man who likes to climb mountains without a harness. And The Rescue is a similarly impressive movie about people with a very certain skill, in this case cave divers, but instead of just doing it to do it, these cave divers are tasked with rescuing the Taiwanese boys soccer team that got trapped in a cave. It's this fascinating true story that I remember hearing about in the news, but whenever you hear news stories, you don't really get the feeling of human beings involved. You just hear, boys trapped in cave, they were rescued, the end. But this movie really puts you into the life or death decision making that the hundreds of people who are trying to rescue them were going through, and it gives you this really deep appreciation for these pretty much insane cave divers who would, weave their way into these very claustrophobic caverns in order to try to rescue these boys who this monsoon sort of ensconced them in this cave. They mix interviews with footage from the news and things like that, but they also have these amazing recreations of the rescue themselves, of the scuba divers. I'm not entirely sure how they accomplished this, but it looks realistic. It looks like how it would look if these boys were being rescued. It's a true story that, in a weird way, restored my faith in humanity. It just shows how this, very intense teamwork can accomplish great things. And in a year where it can seem very hopeless, it was a very hopeful film. All right, my number 5 movie this year. This is a horror film from A24, and this movie is Saint Maud. Basically, this whole movie is a descent into madness on part of the Maud character, who cannot reconcile her devout religious beliefs with some of these sinful feelings that she's drawn to by this woman she's taking care of. And it is this very intense, almost like Stephen King's Carrie. It's this woman who has all of these repressed feelings, and they explode in some very horrific ways. Definitely not a movie for everyone, but to me, this is the best horror movie of the year, and it also has one of the best endings to a film I have seen all year. So definitely one to check out if you're into that kind of thing. All right, my number 4 pick is another documentary called Summer of Soul, and this one is about a concert that was held in Harlem in, I believe, the 1970s. And this concert had some of the most legendary acts of the time. It had Stevie Wonder, Gladys Knight and the Pips, Nina Simone, Sly and the Family Stone, so many great artists. And yet, the footage from this legendary free 3-day concert in the city sat on a shelf for 50 years. I don't understand why this is the case. They kind of say in the movie that it was because no one was interested in it, but I don't see how that's possible. Look at all these legendary acts. But luckily, 50 years later today, Questlove, who is the band leader for The Roots, who are on The Tonight Show, he brought this concert back to life, restored the footage, and he brought back some of the old performers to watch this thought lost forever to history footage. And it's a very powerful moment to see some of these artists with tears in their eyes relive some of these moments that they thought were lost forever to history. So the music is great. It has a powerful message. It's sort of this great time capsule of the 1970s era in New York and the country at large. And of all of the performances, weirdly enough, my favorite might be The Fifth Dimension, who had a big hit with their version of Aquarius from the musical Hair. And in particular, they sort of reflect on that song and their personas at the time as sort of not being black enough for the black music community. And they really wanted to do this concert to like celebrate who they are and their culture and things like that. And it's this very powerful moment of them reliving this concert experience that definitely gave me a whole new appreciation for that song. So yeah, I highly recommend Summer of Soul. You can watch this, I believe, on Hulu right now. It is a fantastic music documentary. My number 3 movie is The Father. This stars Anthony Hopkins as a man suffering Alzheimer's, and it is the best performance that I saw this year. He does a fantastic job. It's the best he's ever been, which is saying a lot, and he's very well deserving of being currently the oldest ever Best Actor Oscar winner. So the way this film was made, it really immerses you in what it feels like to have dementia or Alzheimer's. And I think I speak for a lot of people watching this video. A lot of us have had family members who have suffered from similar ailments. I know, growing up, my grandmother had dementia towards the end of her life, and it's very disturbing to see, family members, they lose their memory, they forget who their family members are, they forget when they are, they believe that they're younger versions of themselves, they think people who are dead are alive, they don't know where they are. It's this very disconcerting feelings of confusion and sadness, and this movie, it might be a rough watch, but it hauntingly captures that same feeling. It really puts you in the shoes of someone who is experiencing this, and in a weird way, it kind of is like a straight-up horror movie. Pretty much the one thing that's guaranteed for all of us on this planet is that eventually we're going to grow old and our bodies will start to fail us and we will die. It's just the one thing we all have in common, that eventually life has an end. And this movie really confronts those things head on, and it does not shy away from difficult subjects. It's a particularly brave performance from Anthony Hopkins, who himself is becoming an older man, and the filmmaking on display is amazing. The way it's edited, the way the sets are designed, how they will sort of swap out different actors and actresses to convey the confusion and disorientation of this disease is incredible. It's just an overall wonderful, wonderful movie based on a stage play, and it really uses all of the cinematic tools in the toolbox to create this disturbing experience. So The Father, it's a very, very tough movie to watch, I would say, but it's an important film that I would recommend to anybody to watch. But definitely buckle in. It might be an emotional ride. My number 2 movie of the year is Minari. This is a movie starring Steven Yeun as a Korean-American father who brings his family from Korea to Arkansas to try to start a new life for themselves, and he has these dreams of being a farmer and owning his own land and all of that stuff. So they're in the middle of nowhere. They're taking this huge swing of a risky move to try to make it in this new country, and I found this movie utterly absorbing and delightful. It's just just a fantastic family drama. All of the actors in this movie are fantastic. Steven Yeun got my runner-up for Best Actor this year. He's fantastic. But the standout, I would say, of the family is Grandma Minari, as I call her. She is fantastic. You have Steven Yeun, his wife, and 2 kids, and then Grandma moves over from Korea. And definitely there is a lot of like cultural displacement, not feeling like totally American, not feeling totally Korean. They're sort of in this weird limbo zone that a lot of immigrants feel, and it really puts you in their shoes. I can't claim to have any of these feelings. I've pretty much lived in the same area my whole life in New England, so to be able to watch this movie and really get this sense of what it's like to be an immigrant, completely changing your life to move to a new country for this chance at an opportunity at the risk of your, money. You might lose everything. You might lose your family. His marriage is put into jeopardy because of the, major decisions he makes. It's this really fascinating thing, and it's so culturally specific that I just found it very endearing and well made. You can tell that everyone involved, this was like a huge passion project. The director and Steven Yeun himself pretty much parallels a lot of their personal lives. So I thought this was a fantastic movie. It has humor and heart and very intense scenes at times as well. It was just a fantastic family drama. On paper, you see this movie about a Korean-American family, and the father wants to start a farm, and you might think, well, that sounds incredibly boring. I'm just going to watch Spider-Man instead. I would say that would be a mistake, because this movie is a million times better than any Spider-Man movie. I highly recommend Minari. It's my number 2 movie of 2021. Alright, and finally, we have reached the top, my number 1 movie of the year. And surprise, my number 1 movie of the year is not one I have seen on anyone else's top movie of the year choices. So hopefully it gets a nomination at the Oscars, but I doubt it. But anyway, my number 1 movie of the year is Billie Eilish, The World's a Little Blurry. This is a new Apple TV Plus documentary about one of the biggest stars in music today, Billie Eilish. She's only a teenager, but she has risen very quickly to the top of her industry, making music that makes a deep connection with her audience. And this documentary is a very intimate portrait of her rise to stardom. I'm not even sure how they had all this footage. They must have just been recording for a lot of their lives or something like that. But you see her humble beginnings making music with her brother in this bedroom that's very small, and then you see her meteoric rise all the way to getting tons of Grammys, and she gets to meet her idol Justin Bieber. It's this really fascinating story, and you can see how with superstardom comes a lot of problems, and it exacerbates a lot of her sort of mental issues that she's had. And it's this fascinating study of how important family is as well, because they remain kind of the tether for Billie from going off the rails. And it's this really interesting look at what a pop star is in our culture, how celebrity culture is kind of toxic as well. It's this really fascinating insight into the music industry and this artist specifically, and it made me a fan of her music. Pretty much this single movie is what opened my eyes to why Billie Eilish is one of the best music artists working today, even though she's so young. It's not my typical kind of music. I'm more of a rock and roll guy. So when I first heard her music when she was getting big, I thought, oh, it's all whispery stuff. I'm not into that. But watching this documentary, I now am a regular Billie Eilish listener, and it just clicked for me with this movie. So it's a really interesting documentary. I think it ranks among the best music documentaries ever made. So that says it all right there. It's one of the best music documentaries ever made, in my opinion. So I would highly recommend checking this one out on Apple TV+. It's very much worth it. A really great movie. So thank you for watching. That is a wrap on my top 10 list of the year. If you enjoyed this video, definitely give it a thumbs up. And if you have any recommendations that were not on this list, definitely let me know below in the comments if I need to check out anything, or if you think something deserved a place on my top 10 list that was not present. Just real quick, I wanted to list off some of the movies that I did not get a chance to check out this year, just to eliminate some of those movies that are on a lot of top 10 lists, but because this year has been crazy busy, and they do dump a lot of these movies in November and December to qualify for Oscars. It's just been crunch time every year, so inevitably a lot of this stuff I'll catch up with in the coming months. So we have, very quickly, Annette, Becoming Cousteau, Bruised, Come From Away, Crypto Zoo, Cyrano, Drive My Car, The Electrical Life of Louis Wayne, Encounter, Finch, Flag Day, Flea, The Hand of God, A Hero, The Humans, Jacob's Wife, The Lost Daughter, Mass, Memoria, Mitchells vs. the Machines, Parallel Mothers, Petite Maman, Prisoners of the Ghostland, Respect, Swan Song, The Tender Bar, The Tragedy of Macbeth, The Velvet Underground, and The Worst Person in the World. So that seems like a lot of movies, but they were truly released mostly in the month of December. So again, I didn't have time to check out everything. But hopefully, regardless, this top 10 list will remain solid throughout the coming years as I look back. So anyway, thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Keep an eye out for my most anticipated movies of 2022. That one is set to drop exactly on midnight on December 31st of this year. So keep an eye out for that. And until next time, I'll see you later.